pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Counsel Belanger.
Here.
Counsel Elliott.
Here.
Mayor Kennedy.
Here.
Counsel Leahy.
Present.
Counsel Leary.
Here.
Counsel Mercier.
Here.
Counsel Milanazzo.
Here.
Counsel Rourke. Here. Counsel Samaras.
Here.
9 present.
Okay, we have 3 candidates, and so before I introduce the first candidate, I thought that what we do is go alphabetically, beginning with Counsel Belanger for the first candidate. For the second candidate, we'll start at the other end with Counsel Samaras, and then for the third candidate, we'll begin with Counsel Leary and go back and forth like that, with the mayor being last on the third candidate. Does that sound good to everybody? I think you'll like it. All right, so Sheila Ruth is the first candidate. Ms. Ruth.
Just make sure that the light's on, okay? Is that on? Okay, all set.
Hi, good evening. Sheila Ruth. Obviously, I have to apologize ahead of time because I have a little bit of a cold. Sorry. Okay, I have.
We have
Have a-
a
sorry.
green light. If the green
It
light
is
is
on.
on. Okay.
I have a little bit of a cold, so I apologize ahead of time. A little introduction of myself. I am an accountant. I'm an MBA-educated accountant. I have my master's degree and my bachelor's degree from a college in New York. I am working on my CPA. I do not have it yet. It is something that in my prior employment I did not need, so I did not do it, and so I'm working on that now. I have over, I hate to say it and admit it, but I have over 25 years of experience in accounting. I started out very young, doing bookkeeping and that sort of thing, and it has just been something that I've done since the very beginning. Most recently, I teach adjunct at some of the local colleges, and that includes financial accounting, managerial accounting, auditing, among other things, and taxation. I worked for the IRS for approximately a little over 8.5 years as an auditor, as a tax auditor, and also behind the scenes in planning and specialization programs, which is kind of the gateway to management. So I've been in the government system for a while. I understand how things work. And prior to that, I was in public accounting, and before that, in private industry. Again, doing accounting and that sort of thing. So that's pretty much my background. Okay?
Thank you. And so we'll begin the questions with Counsel Belanger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sheila, good evening.
Good evening.
Welcome to the great city of Lowell, and we thank you for your interest here in the position as city auditor. We'll begin, but Sheila, you got a rather impressive resume.
Thank you.
Now, do you have any experience, though, with the Munis software, which is what the city of Lowell uses? Do you have?
Right. No, I do not. I did see that on the job description. I do not have experience with Munis. That's something that I don't have, although my background does involve using a lot of proprietary computer software, especially within the federal government. So it was a matter of just learning those systems. I never had an issue with it. It was sort of trial and error. You know, you didn't really receive the training programs, but no, I don't have that. But I have used other accounting software products.
Okay.
So.
Would you call them similar to Munis, or could you go as far?
I'm not familiar with Munis, so I don't know.
Okay.
But usually most of them now in this day and age are fairly similar. So, so I would imagine that they're pretty similar.
Okay, thank you. And if you could just elaborate a little bit on about supervising personnel and what experience you've had in that department.
Okay, so recently I mean, the only supervisory experience I have right now is all of my students. So I manage them, which sometimes can be difficult. My prior background, when I was in the IRS, I used to fill in for the managers. So whenever the managers would go out, you know, vacations and that sort of thing, I would fill in for them. Part of my training and where I was headed with the IRS was into the management program, which is why I went into planning and special projects. That was sort of the path that I was on while I was there. So I did have a lot of opportunities to fill in as an acting manager in those roles. Prior to that, I worked as an office manager and a business consultant running different offices when I was working in private industry. So my experience managing employees is a little more further in my past than recent, but I have done so.
Okay, thank you very much. No more questions, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Counselor Elliott?
Thank you and welcome,
Thank you.
Sheila. So I do see in your prior job, you do discuss you were an auditor for the IRS. Can you explain or tell me a little bit about the audit process that you would conduct?
About the audit process as far as the IRS itself, how, it depends on really which type of audit that I was doing. So basically, I mean, are you looking for sort of the pre-audit, like pre-audit stages, the different stages of the audit? Is that what you're looking for? Okay, so basically we would receive a case. So I would work, depending on where in my background I was working in, I would receive cases. Sometimes they were up to 280 cases. So sometimes if you were working an individual, you would have 3 or more years for that one particular taxpayer. When I was working in the offshore voluntary disclosure program, I had much more than that. So it depends on the program that I was in. But basically, we would receive the case, do what's called a pre-audit. So look at the case, look at the tax returns, look at everything, get an idea of what it is that you're looking at. Evaluate what are called LUQs, so large, unusual, and questionable items. So anything that may pop out at you with your experience, your background, your knowledge, and your skills, something on that doesn't look right. So you would then take that and analyze, find out about the business, do your research about the business, research the tax law, or any other regulations that were involved, get an idea of what you're doing, prepare your questionnaires, and send out what's called a document request and a notice of audit, which a lot of people don't like receiving. And then from there, you would conduct the audit, and from what you glean from all of their documentation that they provide, then I would go back in, do some more research with the law or whatever else I needed to do, and then go back. And after a while, you go back and forth, and then eventually I would sit down with whoever it was. So if the taxpayer was representing themselves, I would sit down with the taxpayer, or if they had a representative, I would sit down with whoever it was. So it was the CEO of a company, it would be the attorney, the accountant, anyone could be representing the taxpayer. And sit down with them, go over and discuss the findings, and send out a report. That I would actually write the report, citing all the law and everything else, and then go from there. Hopefully that kind of, and
Yeah, no, that was good. You went into an in-depth discussion. So, and actually, this municipality and municipal accounting is a little bit different than,
right.
Private sector accounting. How do you feel? I mean, I guess, what is your understanding of municipal accounting, and what are the similarities or differences? How would you acclimate yourself to this type of accounting?
Okay, well, in my background, when I was working in public accounting, I worked for, the public accounting company that I worked for did local audits of local government agents, government cities and towns in the local area, which was in New York, so it was a little bit different, and it was a while ago. I'm sure things have changed since then, but there are similarities. There are a lot of differences in the way that it's handled, but there are similarities as well. For me, having been an auditor and having the experience that I have, which is an advanced knowledge of accounting. For me, I don't think it would be very difficult for me to transition from one to the other, not at all. I do understand and have a background with governmental accounting, even though it's not a lot. So for me to transition in, I don't believe would be an issue for me.
Well, thank you. Just want to touch a little bit on managing a staff. We have a small staff in there. One part of the auditor's office here is we perform payroll out of it. Any experience with payroll, producing payroll?
I do. I have tons of experience with payroll. So from when I was an office manager, I was solely prepared all of the payroll. I worked as a business consultant. I did their payroll. It was for, I want to say, up to 300 employees. I don't remember off the top of my head. And that was by myself. Then from there, I went on to most of my positions, I had something to do with payroll. When I was working in public accounting, we had small businesses that we would do the payroll for, but it wasn't as voluminous as what I was doing on my own. And then in the IRS, part of the requirements of doing your audit were to get the payroll reports, check them over, kind of do a little audit of it, and then if there were issues that you found, you would then go in and send it to the employment tax. So you would do a referral. You wouldn't actually conduct the audit, but you would do sort of a pre-audit for them to make sure that everything was up to snuff that you could see.
Okay, and lastly, contracts, and actually contracts are approved and monitored and actually interpreted by, I'm talking collective bargaining agreements, I'm talking service contracts, I'm talking even procurement requests. Any experience in those particular?
A little bit, not as much as I probably would like to have, but I do have a little bit of experience. I worked when I was a business consultant, I worked with an engineering firm. So a lot of that construction work, as you know, is a lot of contracts and everything else, but they did have a cost accountant as well. So I didn't have my hand in it, but I am familiar with the contracts and everything that goes along with that, and I teach it, so.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for your interest. I appreciate your answers to my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council. We're, I believe I'm next alphabetically. We're sitting out of, out of sequence a little bit, or I'm sitting out of sequence, but I'm next, and I just have a couple of questions. Sure. You're a candidate for, you're a CPA candidate. How much is left for you on that, or what's?
I have a long way to go. So I've only gone through one, so I do have a ways to go on it. But it is something that I've realized over time. After working in the government, I didn't necessarily need it. And now that I'm not in the federal government, what I realized is with Sarbanes-Oxley and all of the rules that have come into play since I was working for the federal government, a lot of the companies, whether it's a corporate environment or anywhere else, they're requiring, because of the strict guidelines and the penalties that that management may, what's the right way of saying that, may have happened to them if they have material misstatements, they're requiring a lot of their lower level employees to have CPAs. So when you look at the job openings that are out there, that's pretty much what they're requiring, whether you have 20 years of experience or no experience, they're requiring CPAs. So I know as an accountant, even though when I got out, it was, if you didn't need it, if you weren't going into public accounting, you really didn't, the advisement was don't, waste your time and money on the CPA exam because you're not going to need it. So now I realize that it's something that over time, I need, but I'm not that far along, and
Okay.
I haven't.
So if you were to be hired for this position, that would mean that you didn't need the CPA for this position.
Right.
And so if that were the case, would you still pursue it? And if you did, how long do you imagine that it would take you to get the CPA?
I absolutely plan on actually getting it for the sole reason that, I never expected to leave the government, and I did. So circumstances left me to leave there. So I feel that it's something in my career I need. Absolutely, I plan on getting it. And there's an 18-month window that you have before you start losing, your passing grades. So you need that 18 months time. Working full-time and studying for the exam will be difficult, but it's something that I do need for myself, for my career, and for my stability. My
So
employment stability.
probably sometime in 2017?
I would say.
Yep, okay. And I don't know how familiar you are with Plan E, but basically, three people work for the city council directly, and one is the city clerk, one is the city manager, and the third is the city auditor.
Okay.
And so part of the duties are that you attend meetings oftentimes on Tuesday evenings. And the meetings start at 6:30 and it can run, anywhere from 8:30 to up until 10 o'clock. Is that something, is that a problem
That's not a
for you?
problem for me. The classes that I teach at Southern New Hampshire are night classes. So I would just make sure that I didn't have a class on Tuesday nights. My auditing class is going to be I think it's 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night in Manchester. So there's no issue with me as far as having to work, on a night that late or whatever, no.
And
issues.
so if you were the successful candidate, you would also be the department head. And so I think Council Belanger asked you this at the beginning, but is there any experience that you can point to where you were supervising a group of people?
Yes, so when I was working as an office manager for an engineering firm, I had a small group of people underneath me. It was 4 employees, I believe, if I remember correctly. So I managed them day to day, unfortunately had to fire one person. So I understand, a lot of that background there. When I was filling in with the IRS, I didn't have those sorts of requirements. It was on a day-to-day basis. It wasn't anything that had to do with the decision-making as far as the management goes. And then when I was a business consultant, I worked for a firm that was out of the UK. And for them, I managed the office as well. So there were about 3 people there that I managed on a regular basis.
Okay. Okay, thank you. That's all I have. And so Council Leahy is next.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So what brings you to Lowell when you saw the application?
An accounting position that was open, to be honest. I've never worked in a local government. I haven't had that experience, but it seemed like something that I was interested in, something that I haven't done, and also something that I would be interested in learning about. I don't like to stay stagnant in life in general, so it was interesting to me that it would be a different avenue for me to, open to me that I might be able to get into and learn about. So.
Now, you had mentioned that you teach at night. Do you think if you were successful here, would you continue teaching at night, or would you have to see how that goes? Or?
I mean, obviously, I would have to see how it goes. A full-time position takes priority over the teaching, but I do love it. I absolutely love it. I love imparting my knowledge to the students, and I teach both. Right now, I teach at Salem State as well, which I wouldn't be able to do because that's during the day. But the students at Southern New Hampshire are a lot of adult students, and so they're working during the day. They really hold your feet to the fire, which for me is enjoyable because it sort of boosts my own ego in a sense, because I know that I know this stuff well enough to impart my knowledge to them, and I really enjoy developing them and helping them in their careers and in their futures. And it's something that I fell into. I did not want to do it. I was forced to actually teach a class. I did not want to do it. Me teaching, no. Yeah, this isn't something I want to do. And I just, after the first hour, I loved it. And I thanked my manager for making me do it, face your fears sort of thing. But yes, I would love to continue doing it if I could.
Okay. And as Councilor Kennedy said, so you work for the council, so there's obviously 9 of us here. And then in the office, you'd probably be overseeing about anywhere from 5 to 6 people. And you feel that wouldn't be a problem for you
No,
as far as, okay.
no, not
oversight.
at all.
All right. And I guess the other question is just the munis, munis again.
Right.
So you feel comfortable that you'd be able to learn our system here in Lowell?
I do feel comfortable with it. When I worked for the IRS, like I said, we had a lot of proprietary software that basically, I mean, if all of a sudden you got access to the program, there was no one there to teach you. You just sort of went in and they gave you a little book that kind of, didn't really tell you much, so you had to kind of learn as you went. And so that's sort of my background, is just learning software as I've gone on. I started out in computer science engineering my way back long time ago, before I switched to accounting. I was a computer science major. So I don't really have issues with software or computers or that sort of thing. I generally understand it well. So no, I don't think that would be an issue. And even if I had to, I would spend the time at night or at home, because it helps me in my job and in my future, so I don't have an issue with that, to learn it. Put the effort in to have to learn it,
Sure. All right. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you, Council Leary.
Hi, Sheila. How you doing tonight? Good. One of the good things as you come in number 5, all the questions you thought of have been asked. So I'm going to try something a little different.
Okay.
In your career, and from a supervisor or from a manager, ever give you constructive criticism? Can you give me an example when that may have occurred and how you dealt with that and what you learned from it?
Yeah, I mean, there were many different times. especially in the beginning when I was working as an IRS agent, it takes a good 5 years to really get up to speed with everything that's going on. So there was a lot of constructive criticism that happened. And in the beginning, I think it was very, very hard for me to hear a lot of that criticism, and it just, I can't do this job, why am I even here, sort of thing. But then after a while, I got used to it, and over time, started really realizing that I was getting better and learning from it. So I believe that constructive criticism, in my experience and what I've learned, is actually a good thing. So I kind of welcome it now. An example of that, basically case files, how I went about, doing the pre-audits, researching the taxpayer, the background. I mean, I would go out, I thought my job was to go out and dig and do everything and protect the government's interests. And so I tried to do the best job that I could there. And they're like, no, you need to take a step back and see what you find first, and don't go digging into everything. And, so at first I was sort of deflated because I thought, well, then I'm not protecting the government's interests. But I, of course, listened and realized that you'll find the issues that are there. And they knew that. It'll pop out at you. With experience and time, you'll see the things that are wrong with that particular business. You don't have to go digging for it. It'll pop out at you. And if it doesn't, then you move on. So I sort of learned that to accept that criticism, and it may help me and will help me in the future. So, yeah.
Have you ever had an audit of your own work done and like a quality review?
Oh, absolutely.
And how did you react to those type of findings?
I didn't get anything bad back, so it was good, I guess. Yeah, in order to be working for the government, you have to have an audit, the 3 years audit done, and then there's continuous review. So actually, in the end, I was the one who reviewed other people's work when it came through and was going elsewhere. But you don't realize there's a lot of review that goes on. So once it leaves your desk, it goes to the manager, and then the manager has to review it. And sometimes it'll come back to you. But I maybe once or twice had cases that came back to me. I sort of was more thorough and exacting in the way that I did my cases. And then it went to another area where they would then review it before it got sent on.
Okay.
So there were multiple places where it got reviewed before it actually went into the files. So, and I didn't receive anything back from my manager, yes, those couple of times, but other than that, I didn't receive anything from local office or national office.
Okay. It's been said before that not essentially, you will be working for 9 individuals.
Right.
Have you ever had any experience with working with more than one, I guess, supervisor or manager? And how would you envision working with essentially 9 bosses?
I've never worked for 9 people, no. I did work, it was interesting, when I worked as a business consultant, I did work there were local management, but because they were from the UK, I always had the UK finance office calling me and the vice president over there, who was, overseeing everybody here. So I had some bosses here, plus I had my own boss that we were consultants, so I had my own boss that I had to report to, and then I had the UK over here that I had to report to. So it was interesting, but I felt it worked out well. I don't recall there being any issues as far as that goes. I think you work with it and you work it out somehow, and you find a way. My question would be, is there one particular person who you report to, or is it strictly, it is nine different people? It's one.
Yeah, I think it's 9 folks, but you're also reviewing the city manager, the city finances, as well as the school department.
Right.
So you're working, not only auditing, but you're working as a, part of a team and as representing the city and representing, the finances of the city.
Okay.
So it's a different dynamic, but, it's something that when you come into it, you would have to really think about how you're going to react and work with 9 different individuals, and then ultimately the city manager and the city clerk, too.
Right, okay.
Thank you very much.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you, Council Mercia.
Yes, good evening, Sheila, and welcome to Lowell.
Thank you.
Have you ever been to Lowell before?
I have. I went to UMass Lowell to see about a PhD program, actually. So I've been here, and then, of course, I went to the ballpark.
Now, when you worked in the IRS, at the same time, you were an adjunct professor? So you did one job during the day and the other one in the evening?
Yes, that was only for one class that I taught at North Shore Community College. Since then, since I left the IRS, I've been adjunct teaching more now. But when I was at the IRS, I did do the one class at North Shore.
Are you familiar with the Plan E form of government that we have here in our city?
I'm sorry, with the what?
Plan E form of government that we
Planning
have?
form of government?
Plan E form.
Plan E.
We're under
No.
the Plan E form.
No.
As an auditor, you would be responsible for approval, payment, and recording of all financial transactions for the city. Are you aware of that?
Yes, yes.
Are you aware of UMass? And I don't mean UMass Lowell, I mean the Department of Revenue Uniform Municipal Accounting System. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, and actually what I did prior to coming here was I actually went on the state's website and reviewed some of the information that they had there to get an idea of what it was that would be expected of me.
And are you familiar with the Schedule A, Statement of Public Debt?
I'm familiar with it in reviewing it, yes, I have not
Did you
prepared
review
one.
the tax recap?
I reviewed it, yes.
Are you, the certified balance sheet at the end of the year, are you familiar with that?
Yes, balance sheets, yeah.
Okay. Do you have any experience with qualified borrowing?
Qualified borrowing as in bonds and that sort of thing.
Yes.
I
Municipal
teach,
budgeting?
I teach it, but I don't have the experience the practical experience on, in working for a local government, no. But I
So
teach it and I am familiar with it.
Do you teach financial forecasting?
Some of it is forecasting, so in managerial accounting, we do cover forecasting and managerial finance, so that includes, also, it focuses on manufacturing, but it's a matter of forecasting and those sorts of things, budgeting, planning them, but on the for-profit side. So it is similar, but there are different goals when you're looking at a government as opposed to a for-profit agency.
Just so that you wouldn't be in shock if you did become the auditor, you are required to be here on our council meeting nights, which is every Tuesday evening. You realize that?
Okay.
You don't have a problem with that?
No, I don't have a problem with that.
So what is your greatest asset that you would bring with you for the city of Lowell as an auditor?
For me, I think it's a personal drive. I tend to push myself. I tend to be exacting. I wouldn't last very long as an auditor if I wasn't. So I tend to, in my life, tend to push myself to do new things, to learn new things, to make sure that I maintain a certain level of honesty and respect for myself and for others. So I bring myself with that, the ability to be able to learn things. I don't like to stay stagnant. I don't enjoy, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't enjoy sitting back and just sort of staying where I am. I like to sort of dig in and see what I can do to change things or make things better or whatever, while maintaining a certain level of integrity and exacting nature, so.
That's fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Council Milonazo.
Thank you, Mayor. Sheila, welcome.
Thank you.
We're very anxious to get this position filled, as you can imagine, as is our acting auditor, Mr. Healy. Since the position has been open for so many months, and it being the auditor's office and dealing with safeguards, if you will, dealing with a lot of money, what would you look for in your first, say, couple of weeks on the job? What types of checks and balances would you want to make sure is in place in a professional public auditor's office?
Well, I think the first thing you would need to do is, because although someone's been looking after it, I would need to go back and see and make sure that everything that's supposed to be done has been done. Because there are things that can be missed over time or things that fall to the wayside that happen. In that, I'll be able to familiarize myself as well with exactly what's going on, what the status of everything is, and how to then move forward in the position. So you have to look at the past, and you have to look at not only the past few months where the position's been sort of in a holding pattern, but before then, what happened? I was looking at the auditor's report and seeing what they said and how all
Powers and
that.
Sullivan, the Powers and Sullivan report?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
yes, and you know, I was looking at that, familiarizing myself just with what sort of, you know, what their report said, you know, what were the deficiencies, what deficiencies previously existed that were fixed. There's always going to be deficiencies or things that you can make better, you know, and work on, and so that would be what I would do, is sort of see what the status quo is and how it's working, what maybe has been missed, and familiarize myself with it before charging forward.
Okay, okay. Are you familiar with federal grants? I'll talk a little bit about federal grants. The fact that, again, a municipality, we get support from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, we get
Right.
support from the Department of Transportation, Homeland Security. Are you familiar with some of the grant requirements from an auditor standpoint?
Some of them. I'm familiar with HUD. I'm familiar with, because of quite a few of my cases, when I worked for the IRS, we actually had people who owned real estate, who were in the business of dealing with HUD and Section 8 and all that. So I got familiar with some of the rules, not a lot, but some of the
Okay.
rules. And of course, if you can read tax code, you can read any of the other federal regulations. So it was easy for me to be able to go and find out what those requirements were and how that sort of worked into me, into what I was doing, what my duty was.
Okay,
But I'm not completely familiar with all of them, no.
Okay.
But I am familiar with some of them and some of the requirements. I did work for a nonprofit a long time ago. It was a nonprofit nursing agency. So I'm familiar with a lot of the grants as well from that. So I would help, it was when I was in college, I was a secretary. And so I would help my executive director with all of them. I saw, you know, I created all the reports, I created all of the grants, I saw how she wrote them and everything else. So I'm familiar with that sort of background as well.
Okay.
United Way grants and community block grants and all the things that we used to do. So,
Okay.
but that was a long time ago, so I'm
Okay.
sure it's changed. But I am familiar with the process.
okay. And I guess it's the GASB, the Government Accounting Standards Board, we get statements, if you will. I know that as it relates to, say, other employment benefits
Right.
will change. We have, as a lot of municipalities and towns, we have a liability that's out there, and
Right.
we'll certainly be looking to the auditor, to the chief financial officer, to the city administration to help us deal with that going forward. Are you comfortable with that? I think
Right.
it's GASB 74 or 75 that's going into effect in 2017.
Right.
To again, help us in today's dollars, as Mr. Healy will tell you, in today's dollars, how we book that.
Right, exactly, and I mean, that would be, I would imagine that would be the role, to
Right.
be able to take that information and those requirements and translate it.
Okay.
Basically, and make sure you guys know what's going on.
Right,
I see
okay.
that.
Okay. My last question, do you belong to any professional accounting organizations or?
No, I don't,
You
no,
don't?
not
Okay.
right now, no.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Leonardo. Council Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mr. Ruth, and thank you for applying for the job. In your time as an IRS auditor, any particular type of audits that you did, or was it a wide range, you know, was it personal, commercial, business? What kind of particular audits did you do while at the IRS?
I did pretty much almost everything. So I worked for small business self-employed. They did everything. So it was individuals, self-employed, Schedule C, self-employed, then partnerships, flow-through entities, so 1120Ss, and regular corporations. So I did all of those. Nonprofit and governmental was a whole nother area of the IRS, but that was the area that I worked in. I also worked for Large Business International, so I was in the international arena. And I also did international cases. So I don't know if you're familiar with offshore voluntary disclosure program, where their Swiss banks are no longer, they don't have their secrecy. So that was a project that I worked on. So I'm familiar with international taxation, and those were the cases that I worked with there. And that was everything. So that was individuals, that was, people here, people overseas, everywhere. So I was dealing with a lot of different tax returns from different countries as well with that.
Thank you. In any of your prior job occupations, did you ever have either monthly or yearly, revenue versus expense reports that you had to create and give to either a particular company or your employer?
When I worked as a business consultant for the UK company, it was my responsibility. I was there helping out in the local US office, but I also had a responsibility to protect the interests of and report to the vice president who was in the UK. So I would weekly send to him cash projections, but I would also, on a monthly basis, send everything. So send those budgetary reports to them, in that sense, budgetary and what our actual expenses were. So I did do some reporting to him on a monthly and weekly basis as well.
And, that's probably one of the main duties you'll have as an auditor, here in the city. So I guess my final question would be, while doing the revenue versus expenses an audit, if you found a discrepancy or an irregularity in such reports, how would you handle that situation?
Well, first, I would have to go back and find out where it was. That's how I would handle it. If there's a discrepancy there, there shouldn't be, but if there is, I would have to go back, find it, and see what the issues are. And then from there, once I know what the issue was, then handle it, whether it's having to correct a process that exists, or maybe it was just an anomaly. Sometimes that just happens. Mistakes do happen. It would have to depend on what it was that the reason behind it. Then I would have to move forward with it.
And in your experience, if you found that was not an honest mistake, and it was something a little different than that, how would you go about that?
I would imagine I would speak to whoever I would, I'm directly in charge to, so I don't know if it would be all 9 of you or how that, hierarchy works, but I would speak to someone who I would imagine is above me or deals with that particular thing. How do we handle this? If it is something that's not an honest mistake, in that sense, nefarious reasons, things like that do happen, so that's how I think I would handle it, yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Samaras.
Thank you, Ms. Ruth. Thank you for applying for the position. When you said if you can read a tax code, I imagine that's quite true in anything that we have. But the question that Councilor Rourke asked about dealing with private companies, I mean, what size was some of these accounts or investigations that you might have had?
So small business, self-employed, basically our whole area did anything under $2 million in assets. Okay, no, 10 million in assets, I'm sorry. I never did anything that big. When I got up to the grade that would handle that, I was actually working in, I had moved actually to Boston and was working in planning and special projects. So I think I probably did corporations that were probably, I want to say maybe majority, like 500,000 in assets. I did a lot of small businesses.
So, did you at any time supervise any team to approach a company, or was it just yourself?
When I worked, yeah. So it was myself, but sometimes I would call in not attorneys. I would call in engineers. I would serve as part of an audit team where I would need an engineer. I would need employment tax. I would need someone else. But my audits were more an individually conducted thing. But I would sometimes have to call in experts to also help me with my exam.
Okay.
So kind of a team, but not really.
Okay.
Yeah.
How would a supervisor or a director describe you? One of your former supervisors or director, how would they describe you as a person or as an individual, as an accountant?
I would say, I don't know, hard to say. Personality-wise, I think they would, pretty straightforward, honest, I think, in that sense. Nice. I'm always willing to help other people. So from a personality sort of standpoint, that's why I enjoy the teaching, that sort of thing, because I do enjoy helping other people. So if somebody asks me a question, it doesn't bother me. Usually I'll go out of my way to help them. From an accounting standpoint, I would say exacting. I would hope at least that they would say exacting, because I try and be as detailed and as perfect as I can, although perfect isn't, we strive to it, but we can never be exactly perfect. But, I would hope that they would say that about me. I would think they would.
Okay. I mean, you obviously have quite a background in accounting and the skills, as you stated. We have a system like Munis, but if you've learned one system, you can learn another. There's no question about that. You're going to supervise a small group of people who really have good knowledge of how the department works and what is expected of them. And you're going to come in a sense, having to learn a lot of what they already know.
Right.
How do you feel how are you going to handle that situation? Because becoming a supervisor, there's an expectation as a supervisor that you're the one that they're going to have to go to. But
Right.
for a short period of time, it's going to be a reverse role. They're going
Right.
to have to come to you. Oh, you're going to have to go to them,
Right.
okay? How are you going to handle that?
Respect them for their knowledge. I think that's the biggest thing is if you respect someone for the knowledge that they do have, I think, that doesn't cause any problem. I don't know. It seems so straightforward to me, in a sense.
That's a good answer, no.
Yeah,
yes.
I don't know. I don't know how to expound upon that. They have been doing it for a while. They do have a certain amount of knowledge, and that's great. And that's something that, as a supervisor, you want to have underneath you. You want to have the people with the knowledge and skills to be able to do their jobs, but yeah, I will have to rely on their knowledge and giving them the respect that they deserve for the time that they've spent doing in their careers what they've done.
Thank you. There are expectations that not only are you going to audit the various departments, but you might find a department that will say, it's not that something has intentionally been done wrong or a bad mistake, but it's just that the process they're using is really either outdated or not done in such a way that it's productive for the city. And that person that might be supervising that department may want to keep that system and may be somewhat reluctant to allow you to make some changes. How do you deal with that type of situation?
Well, use some very good negotiating skills that I kind of learned from the IRS over years.
Can you give me an example,
That's going to happen anywhere you go, I think. So I think part of it is listening to what their reasons are for wanting to keep it the way that it is. And then taking that and listening to what they say. There's always a reason why they want to keep it that way. And maybe it's because they think it's a more simplified method, but if you can come up with a better simplified method and prove to them that there's a way to do it. Sometimes the proof is what you need to bring someone over to your side. Show them that, or somehow work with them to give them a little bit of ownership in the changes that are going to be made as well, also helps. So it depends on the person and the personalities that you're working with, I think. And also it depends on how much, how much authority you have to make those changes as well. If you have the authority to make those changes, you don't have to come in, all guns blazing and say, I'm changing everything, but you can show people respect for what they have and help them to understand or see it in a better way. And try and bring them over to your side, make the transition easier in that sense.
Basically, as other councilors have stated, you're working for 9 people, but in a sense, the importance of your job is you're the eyes and ears for us, for the various, what activities take place. And you're the one that's helping us watch the use of tax money that comes from the people of the city of Lowell. So it's really quite a responsibility. I mean, we're talking over $350 million, over $300 million. And do you see that as something that you can handle?
I do, and the reason that I see it as something that I can handle is because even when I was working for the federal government, my job was to protect the government's interests. No matter where you're working, you're protecting someone's interests, whether it's the man who owns the company or it's what I got out of the federal government, which I was protecting. Although a lot of taxpayers wouldn't see it this way, I was protecting the interests of the taxpayers because I was protecting the interests of the government. And so I see it as, not only would I be protecting the interests and the eyes and ears of the 9 of you, but also the people who pay the taxes into the coffers, so to speak, protecting their interests as well. To me, there's no reason why there shouldn't be a watchdog, so to speak, and I have no problem taking over that role. I think it's an honorable sort of place to be, and I do my father, some pride in being that way. So it's a personal thing for me in a sense as well. So absolutely, I have no issue with that, and I think that it gives you a little bit more pride at the end of the day when you go home, even after a bad day, and you say, well, at least I did the best that I could, and I can live with myself, and I have the conscience, and I know that I did the right thing. And
Thank you
that's-
very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Ms. Ruth, that concludes the interview. You're welcome to make a closing statement. You're not required to make that closing statement, but if you would like to say anything,
Okay.
you're
I'd just
welcome
like to
at this
thank you for
point.
your time and the opportunity. I would enjoy being able to work with you and for you, and go from there. So, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now, if he takes a drink out of it, I'll get it in a glass. Not glass.
Mr. Perry, thank you for being here. You're entitled to an opening statement first, and then we'll begin the interviews. Each of the 9 counselors will have an amount of time to ask you questions. So if you wanted to give your opening statement now, that'd be good.
Certainly. First off, I would like to say thank you for having the opportunity to, A, meet with you guys and hope to do my best to convince you that I am the best fit for your city auditor. First off, I also do want to say that I believe that working for the public is both an honor and a privilege. Personally, I work for, or I serve on the Board of Assessors at the town of North Andover, so actually the town I live in. I've served on the Board of Assessors there for 4 years. It's a stipend position. It's not a full-time job by any means. It's a handful of hours a week at the most, but it's certainly not a full-time job, but it's something that I do take a great deal of pride in. My wife is a public school teacher also in North Andover. She's been doing that for over 10 years now. And then we also have 3 young girls, ages 2 through 7, who are going through the North Andover school system. I was born in Billerica, and I lived the majority of my life actually in North Andover. So I've spent my whole life in the Merrimack Valley. In doing so, I understand how important the city of Lowell is to the Merrimack Valley and how vibrant the city itself is. I have a personal designation of a CPA. I'm a certified public accountant in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I had actually earned that designation about a year ago. In order to do so, I'm not sure how familiar you gentlemen are, and Councilor Mercier.
Okay.
I'm sorry. How familiar you are with the process, but in order to become a CPA, you have to pass 4 very difficult exams within an 18-month window. The exams focus on, one of them is auditing, solely auditing, the whole practice of auditing, financial accounting, taxation and regulation, as well as one general business environments and concepts. The pass-fail ratio for those tests are all around 45 to 55%. So it is certainly a difficult test in order to pass all 4 of those within an 18-month period. I believe shows that I actually do have a broad base of accounting knowledge. I've also earned my Master's of Business in Administration from Suffolk University in Boston. I earned that while working full-time for Liberty Mutual at the time. I took the courses at night, held a full-time job, and it took me about 2.5 to 3 years to do so. The Suffolk accounting program for the master's is actually the only one in the city of Boston that's accredited through the AACSB. It's basically a higher education college board that certifies that the program through Suffolk is actually one of the more rigorous through their accounting program for the master's. Another thing that I do believe that I bring to the city of Lowell, when you have Powers and Sullivan come in and do your independent audits, in order for them to conduct their audit and be officially deemed as independent, they can't just be independent in fact, but also in appearance. I believe I do bring that to the city of Lowell. It's not the same position as what Powers and Sullivan do, but in my work as potentially as a city auditor, I am truly independent and objective in that I don't have any official, formal, or even perceived ties to the city of Lowell. I do believe that that is important in the auditor position. As far as my vision for the auditor's office, I believe that through accountability, the auditor's position or office should be able to promote positive change throughout the organization while ensuring that public resources are utilized economically, effectively, and efficiently. As far as my current work goes, I'm employed at Lawrence General Hospital. I've been there about 3 years now. I am their only financial analyst in their fiscal department, so I actually get to wear a wide variety of hats. As far as daily duties go, the most important one I do on a daily basis is I'm responsible for providing statistics and metrics to actually all the service line, key stakeholders, as well as senior management up to the CEO on a daily basis, letting them know how we're doing in all service lines on a daily basis, actual against budget, how we're doing for the week to date, again, actual through budget, as well as through the month and for the year. So it's a highly visible report that gets distributed across the hospital, and that falls solely on my plate. I also was gifted the capital budgeting process to steward that program at the hospital. So what I do is I meet with the key stakeholders throughout the operation. I'll work with them in essentially trying to prioritize, document, and assess their requests, their needs for capital budget. As most nonprofit hospitals go, especially acute care nonprofit hospitals that see a stress on their cash, it certainly is a difficult position to be in where essentially everything is deemed high-level safety priority, and you have to kind of work with the key stakeholders and work collaboratively to ensure that what we need is taken care of, as well as managing our bottom line as well. Or actually just the strict limits on cash flow is more accurate than the bottom line. On a monthly basis, I work with our controller to manage expenses. I will review all our accounts for salaries and for supplies on a monthly basis, reviewing basically the actual against what we had budgeted for them, trying to see where the ones that we were running a high negative variance, why is that, and trying to dig into that. Are we accruing something that shouldn't be accrued improperly? Are we hitting all 12 months in 1 month, for instance? So I'll work with our controller in that regard. As far as our financial presentation to the board goes, I work with our vice president of finance personally to actually do the whole financial presentation. I'll load the slide decks. I'll pull and manage all the slides as far as the data, the underlying data, graphs, presentation goes, as well as write the narrative that he will then present to the board. Position control is another thing that I actually manage at our hospital. Typically, it would be owned by the HR function. They just simply don't have the bandwidth or expertise to manage, own, and operate that database. So that's something that I actually own as well. I'll update that weekly, if not more. It's usually actually more frequently than weekly, but I have an ongoing meeting set aside just to simply own, manage, and update position control at the hospital. Prior to working at Lawrence General Hospital, I had worked for 2 different companies. Actually, they're almost on the opposite ends of the spectrum. One is what I would term a mature startup. It was a company that had grown from a small startup. It was actually kind of hitting their stride and growing, and they had outgrown their initial means of operations. So I had worked with them, and I also worked at a Fortune 100 company in Boston. Both of those roles were, my job title was a systems analyst. And what I did is I would meet with the key stakeholders for the Fortune 100 company. We were rolling out a claim system that rolled out nationwide. So I would work with a variety of stakeholders in a cross-functional environment to basically understand their needs, both from a business as well as from a system and performance perspective. So I'd worked on 2 successful rollouts, one again at a large Fortune 100 company, another at a, as I deem it, mature startup where it was beyond the 5-person in a small garage type shop that's actually got probably close to 100 employees now at this point, but rolling an operating system out to understand their needs as well for data management, user roles who can actually view data that's highly sensitive in a healthcare environment, as well as who can enter, update, view data, create reports, and manage the documentation as well. So that's essentially my background. I certainly like to open up to you guys to your questions, do my best to help you guys out, answer any concerns that you might have for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll start with Councilor Samaras.
Thank you. Mr. Perry, welcome to the City of Lowell, and thank you for applying for this position.
Thank you.
You also have in your resume that you're a board member of the Board of Assessors in North Andover.
Yes.
Can you give us a little bit of what you do on that board? Do you work as an individual on that board or with the group?
There's 3 members on the board. It's actually right now, one of the members is ill in Florida, so the chairman is actually the one who has some health issues. Without trying to get too far along the lines there, so I've essentially assumed the chairman role. There's 3 members, and what we do is we hear all of the tax abatement hearings in the town of North Andover. They have through the end of January to file an abatement for their taxes, both for personal property as well as for their property taxes. So we will hear their hearings, adjudicate them, determine essentially what their valuation should be, and essentially make sure that they're treated equitably as people with comparable property throughout the town is. So I'll review their application. I'd say at least 2/3 of the applications are on property tax. So I'll review their land card, the building recs, square footage, the neighborhood, that sort of stuff. So it does entail a great deal of local knowledge as far as what the neighborhoods are in North Andover, the valuations, and I will adjudicate those cases with the other board members to determine what a fair assessment is. In North Andover, they have a CAMA. It's essentially, it will apply. We don't have the bandwidth or the availability to have an assessor assess every property, so they have to kind of try and smooth it out by the neighborhoods, by the street, by the size, square footage of the house, and we'll try and determine if the valuation that's been given to that property is fair or unfair, and if we believe it's unfair, to scale it back and ensure that they're taxed properly for their value and again, treated equitably.
Okay. You work for a large organization in that of Lawrence General
Yes.
Hospital. No question about its size. But how would you describe your knowledge about city operations, finance?
I think I do have a pretty good basis beyond the fact of, again, the assessing. I try to stay involved and attuned to not just what's going on locally and in North Andover, where it's simply a town meeting, but we have Board of Selectmen. And I'd hate to admit it, but I do actually watch the Board of Selectmen meeting pretty frequently to make sure I know what's going on in the town. So I think I do have a pretty good understanding. I've gained a heck of a lot of exposure to the inner workings of it since I've been on the Board of Assessors and kind of see how all the other departments intermingle, but that's on a smaller scale than the City of Lowell, and it's a different type of government as well. But I do have a pretty good understanding how essentially the handshake and the different branches react with each other.
Okay. There's no question you have an excellent educational background, but I think you have to admit there's a learning curve. There would be a learning curve for you in this particular position.
Yes.
With that said, you're going to supervise a small group of people, 4 or 5 people in the office, and they're going to have basically very good knowledge of how the city works. Do you think that's going to be a challenge for you to have people that are working for you that basically have, in a sense, more city knowledge? How are you going to handle that? There's an expectation as a supervisor, you're the one that they'd be going to, but at this particular point, while the learning curve is going on, in a sense, you're going to have to go to them.
Yeah, no, I understand the question. I do think it's a fair assessment, that there will be certainly a time for me to ramp up to fully understand that. As far as how I would be able to interact with the people that I do supervise, is I believe that understanding expectations is certainly a key part of making sure that everyone performs, myself included, as well as everyone else that I work with and work for. I believe that people who understand their expectations, and it's reiterated to them, will have a better opportunity to succeed. And I certainly would explain my position to them, let them know my background, and let them know that I'm not familiar with the inner workings of the city of Lowell and their auditing unit, but I'll let them know exactly where I'm coming from, my background, and kind of let them know and try and demonstrate firsthand how I'm picking up and what I can do to essentially show them that I'm capable of handling the position and working with them.
Okay. I mean, you're working for the 9 of us, in a sense. Well, you are working for the 9 of us, and our expectation is that you're going to have to audit the various departments and be our eyes and ears to what's going on. With that said, you're going to have to work with the department heads. Have you ever had to perform an audit-like activity, and how would you go about approaching it? In other words, so it doesn't have to be a city, but did you have to do that at Lawrence General Hospital?
Yes, I have. I've worked with, we have, his title is not quite an auditor. He was an auditor by nature through, I believe it was PricewaterhouseCoopers, and he's essentially our head of compliance. I've worked with him to audit different aspects or different entities within the hospital. I believe that, again, understanding expectations is one of the key parts to ensuring performance.
Okay. Just
Sorry.
one final question.
Yes.
How would a manager or supervisor describe you? What, best manager or any?
I believe I bring a professional attitude to every position I've held. I believe I'm also friendly and easy to work with. I'm not difficult. I'm not challenging. Personally, I think, again, I'm easy to get along with, but I bring a professional demeanor. I'm not, I know there's some people that are gregarious, jokers type, that sort of personality. I do not bring that personality, but I believe I'm gentle nature and easy to work with as well, so.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you, Council Rourke.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Perry, how are you?
I'm
Thanks for
doing well,
applying for the
Counselor. How are you
job.
doing today?
Good, thank you. What's the operating budget at Lawrence General?
It's, we have, as far as gross revenue, it's about $470 million. That's obviously pre-reductions before Medicare, Medicaid. So that gets brought down to, I believe, about 270, somewhere around there as far as millions go for annual.
Okay, and it might be a fair question, but any idea how many employees work there?
There's actually about, counting per diems is about, because again, I do the physician control, so it was about 1408, I believe, as of last week, so.
Okay, and I know you mentioned it before in your opening statement, which was excellent, by the way.
Thank you.
In your career at Lawrence General, do you create the expense versus revenue reports on a monthly basis, weekly basis, yearly basis? I mean, is that something, is that part of your job description?
We don't do it on a weekly basis. We will do it as month end and close. I don't do the interest expense or the depreciation expense. I haven't done that. But that's something that we certainly have pretty fine-tuned as far as being able to determine that. We can go off our, as far as, I guess, setting a baseline for that, a projection. We would certainly use our amortization schedules, and we're actually very close on those. I will work with our departments and our managers in preparation of the budget for the year to break down on a monthly basis expenses. Salary and supplies are the two biggest ones that we see at the hospital, and I do manage those on a monthly basis, yes.
Okay, and with the hospital, it's a little different than the city, but there are certain departments of a hospital, whether it be behavioral health or whatnot, that may be spending much more money than that's bringing in. As your job as a financial analyst, do you have any say in how to get those costs back in control?
Yeah, and one of the things we do when we look at where we see costs that are exceeding what our expectation are, is we also have to make sure for surgery, for instance, is we want to make sure we have a high margins on surgical equipment, supplies. We have screws that cost hundreds of dollars that will go into a patient's hip or knee or et cetera. So one of the things we want to make sure we're doing before I want to talk to someone or approach them about their costs, I want to make sure that it's tied to the volume and make sure I want to see if it's something that's basically, if we're doing more procedures than we had expected, we would expect the expenses to rise in proportion with it as well. So I have to do my homework before I talk to them. But that's something we certainly keep our eye on, and we want to make sure we have as much data as we can on a supply level, again, down to the screw, as well as managing it and comparing it to volume and performance as well by that department.
Okay. You know, and as one of your major jobs, if you do get the position as an auditor, would be going through, particular departments, to make sure that expenses and revenues, do match up. While conducting one of these audits at a certain department, if you found a discrepancy or an irregularity within the department, how would you go about handling that?
Again, in a similar fashion, I want to make sure I have as much homework done as I possibly do before I approach someone. I want to make sure that I have an understanding as to what the drivers are, what the difference is, if it's expected, if it's unanticipated, and I want to understand, certainly there's issues that I would not know why, but I want to make sure I at least have my homework done, I have my I's dotted, my T's crossed before I talk to someone and explain why I'm seeing irregularities and what my assumptions are, as well as what their expectations are, or what their performance is why we're seeing what it is. And certainly it could be, again, it could just simply be new surgeon, different equipment, different pieces, or it could just be something that we haven't seen before, something unforeseen, something unexpected.
And at one point in time, if you did find something that was incorrect or wrong, at what point in time would you bring that to the council's attention?
Again, I certainly, as I said before, with respect to managing people, is I believe that communication actually flows both ways, both from myself to any potential subordinates as well as to the people I work with, to let them know what I'm looking at, let them know what I'm digging into, and let them know what my assumptions are until I can confirm them. So it certainly might depend on the materiality of the event, of what I'm seeing or the irregularities. But again, I would expect to, keep you guys aware of what I'm looking at, as well as the stakeholders I'm working with to try and understand the issues or discrepancies that they're having.
Good. Mr. Perry, thank you very much.
Thank you,
Mr.
Council
Mayor.
Rourke.
Thank you, Council Milonazo.
Thank you, Mayor Kennedy. Good evening, Brian.
Hi, thank you.
Before we start, I just want to tell you that I also did my undergraduate work at Merrimack College and my graduate work at Suffolk University.
Very good.
So even though we've never met before this evening.
We have not, no.
Right. Again, very impressive resume, very impressive opening statement. So thank you for your interest in the auditor's position.
Thank you.
As you know, the auditor's position has been open for some time. What would be your first steps to go in and make sure I don't know if it's from a reconciliation standpoint or just from a checks and balances, what data would you want to see come across your desk to make sure that things are going well in that office?
Well, I have noticed that it has been open for quite a while. I know that there have been some bumps on your end for trying to fill the position. So I have seen that through all your records you have. As far as what I would do is, the first stuff I have actually done before, without even obviously assuming position, is reading everything that you, as the municipality, provide.
Did you get a chance to look at the management letter?
I did, yes, from the presentation from about a
Oh,
week
yes,
ago.
okay.
Yes, so that's one of the first things I want to do, is kind of understand what your priorities are as a city, what you're looking to do, and then how you're looking to drive performance, how you're looking to improve performance, or how you're looking just to simply measure performance.
Okay.
So that's one of the first things I want to do, as well as just kind of understand the challenges that you have outlined, especially from the memos back and forth after the management notes from Powers and Sullivan. So that's
Okay.
one of the first things I want to see, is what are the ongoing issues that you've had that have been identified, and what steps you've taken to try and correct them. Again, my first steps would not be to create waves or destroy or blow up any situation. I want to kind of understand what is going on and how we can work to best resolve it. And obviously, the best way to identify an issue, or to resolve an issue, is to have it identified and to work and take steps and document those steps that you're taking to improve performance.
Okay. Do you think your experience at Lawrence General Hospital, especially working with, say, the Department of Public Health and/or some of the insurance companies, would give you some background to deal with some of the federal and state grant dollars that we actually do receive, and you as the auditor would have to make sure those are being spent according to the grant agreements and so forth?
It does. At Lawrence General Hospital, a great deal of our money is coming as a result of federal grants, whether it's from the DPH, or actually the state of Massachusetts does a great deal of grant work with us that is critical, honestly, for us to be able to have the cash flow in order to get work done that we need to get done. Understanding the obligations we have in exchange for those grants and performances, staffing, data, et cetera, is one of the things that I've certainly seen firsthand in my experience at Lawrence General, that I understand the rationale behind why it would be on the receiving end of those grants and what our obligation is. And I certainly understand that on a smaller scale than the city of Lowell receives as far as grants go. But I have seen it, I believe it helps, and I understand from my background, not just the fact of we have processes, we want to find cash savings, performance improvements in how we operate, but there's also regulatory issues that you have to meet. There's standards you have to apply that simply may not be the most effective way to get from point A to B, but you're required to for a variety of reasons. And I certainly understand those two differences.
Okay. Have you ever been involved in borrowing money on the bond market, working at Lawrence General? Have you done any of that?
We have. I haven't been on the forefront of that. I've worked behind the scenes with the Vice President of Finance to pull a great deal of data together for it, but I've never been involved in the bond presentation or the signing off on the obligation.
Okay, okay. My last question, as part of the function of the auditor, you'll be doing payroll. Have you done payroll in any of your other positions?
I have not signed off on payroll, but again, I wear a variety of hats, where one of the responsibilities I do is, based on the biweekly payroll, I'm going to then provide reports to all of the department heads, providing, FTE reports, productive versus paid FTEs, basically how we're doing of, paid for performance as opposed to holidays, sick time, et cetera. So they're understanding that performance, and that ties in with the volume and basically how their key performance indicators are performing on a given basis with their payroll, as well as their paid FTEs.
Okay.
So I have a background in that, but I have not technically reviewed and signed off on payroll before it goes out.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Council Mercia.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Perry, and welcome to Lowell.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to be here this evening. I'd like to know if, how many hours or what time are we speaking about with your being a member of the Board of Assessors in North Andover? Does that take up much time?
It varies, to be honest with you. Currently, again, as I was saying before, the deadline in the town of North Andover to file for an abatement is by January 31st when you get your tax bill. So essentially, we have a strict time window of essentially 60 days to adjudicate all those cases we get. So presently, we're in what I call the busy season, where I'm sorry.
So if you became the city auditor for the city of Lowell, would you still be a member of the Board of Assessors for North Andover?
I would for the time being. My term runs, or for the lack of a better term, my appointment runs through the end of June.
Of this year?
This year, correct. I don't believe I would continue to do it based on the time where, in order for us to meet with the people in the town of North Andover who are on the board, we typically meet from 2 till 5. I'd say probably 5 or 6 times from February and March. And then from the time after that, the work dries up again. I'll have some paperwork to sign off on, some paperwork to get to the finance director in the town of North Andover, but I can do that on my own time. That's not through work time.
Because part of the requirement of being a city auditor here is you attend our city council meetings, which is every Tuesday evening.
Yes.
Did you know that?
I did. I had actually heard that as I walked in.
Okay, well, you
through,
know
through
that.
the intercom. I did know that now. I know that there's also other committee obligations as well that go along with being an auditor.
Are you familiar with the Munis system?
I am familiar with it. I have not worked directly with it, but I've certainly spent the time over the last month or so actually on their website and looking through training stuff that I could find online to better acclimate myself to Munis.
Did you have a chance to see our city budget at all?
Yes, I have.
You have. Are you familiar with Schedule A?
Yes, I am. I actually have a copy of it as well here, too.
Free cash reports and calculations of free cash? Are you familiar with that?
I'm familiar with them in that I've learned and read about them. I have not actually been the one reconciling or documenting them.
Are you familiar with the general accounting principles? GAAP, G-A-A-P?
Yes, I am.
General Accepted accounting principles?
Yes, I
familiar
am.
with
That's
it?
that's a tenet of the CPA exam on many levels.
Do you have any experience with borrowing, or did you answer that?
As far as bond obligation goes, I've worked to pull the data and the presentations for the bond obligations, but I haven't actually been the person meeting with the financiers on that
Are you
side.
familiar with financial forecasting?
Yes, I am. We do a great deal of that at the hospital. We do it down to the service level.
But you say you did not do a payroll before?
I have not done payroll. We have a controller who works with one individual who will do, or actually two individuals who are responsible for payroll.
Are you
for the
familiar with
hospital.
our planning form of government?
Yes, I am. Planning form of government with the city councilors? Yes.
Do you have any experience in overseeing employees?
I do not. I'm in a position where I report directly to the budget director, is how we're aligned, but I don't directly manage them.
So you don't have a problem overseeing 5 people?
Not at all. No, again, as Counselor Samaras had, as I referenced in one of his questions, again, I believe that being able to set expectations and meet expectations is a bedrock for working with and managing people, and I believe I would be more than well equipped to do so.
What is the greatest asset that you would bring here to the city of Lowell in the auditor's position?
I believe that would be my objectivity. Again, I think that's as I noted in my statement, that I think independence is a major characteristic of someone who has the title of auditor, whether it's independent auditor for a CPA firm or for the city. I believe that I'm hardworking, I learn quickly, and I ask questions when I don't understand what's going on, so I can kind of understand how all the pieces fit.
And you would realize that the people that you will be overseeing probably are up to speed and know and could be training you as well. You understand that, right?
I
And
do,
you don't have a
yes.
problem with that?
No, I don't.
Okay. Thank you very
I have
much.
thick skin, I can understand it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you, Counselor Leary.
Good evening, Brian. Thank you for applying for this job.
Thank you, Counselor.
You're welcome. Just a few quick questions. I guess at the Lawrence General Hospital, what department are you in and who do you report to right now?
I am in our fiscal department. That's the name of the department. I report to the budget director technically, but I
Okay.
also, as I said, we have, there's segregation of duties, especially in the fiscal department, to make sure that the accounting office is solely responsible for journal entry. The payroll side is responsible for payroll input. The controller will sign off on that, and the controller will sign off on accounts payable. But again, there's a segregation of duties. So if the person who is drafting the check is not the person who is also responsible for authorizing the check. I work where I'm essentially that floating person, so I fit under the budget director, where I will work with the budgets both on the service line level and on the capital side.
Okay,
So-
good. While working there, obviously you had experience working with other departments. Have you ever run into an issue where you've had a difference of opinion working with a different colleague? And if you have, what have you learned from it, and how did you resolve that particular issue?
Yeah, yes, that's frequent in work. I think obviously it's human nature where people will disagree on items. One of the things that I have to understand when I go into is I don't know everything. I think that's one of the key things I learned early in life is I don't have the answers to everything. Some people who do certain procedures, certain work, certain medical background that I don't have. But I certainly understand what I'm doing, where I'm coming from, and I want to kind of explain what I see, why I'm seeing it, and what I believe. And that's one of the things is I believe instead of kind of getting into an argument or a shouting match with a difference of opinion, is the best way to kind of get to it is to kind of explain where you're coming from and explain how I got to what the position I got. Because I know that reasonable minds certainly can disagree, and the best way to kind of understand how you got to that road is basically the directions on to.
Can you give me a brief example of a situation like that, even with Liberty or with Crow, that you may have faced, and how you resolve that issue?
Yeah, I guess with Liberty Mutual as well. Again, I was working with a bunch of different subject matter experts who had experience in different lines of business or different insurance types that I had seen before. I had worked essentially on the personal lines, but there were other aspects of, when you look at your auto policy, there's essentially 12 different coverages on it. There were subject matter experts for each and every one of those. So I would understand, I had a very good background in Massachusetts auto policy, but there's obviously other venues, other different jurisdictions that don't do everything the way Massachusetts does. So when I would go in with my preconceived notions on, you know, X, Y, and Z as to why we should have, for instance, underinsured motorist coverage limits and how we want to handle a workflow, is I learned quickly again that Massachusetts doesn't handle everything the way that other states do. We want to be able to have as much information as we can to design something effectively and properly. So that's one of the things that I had butted heads into and realized early that there's other ways to get from point A to point B.
Okay, good. The last question, just as you're coming into running a department, what would be the first steps you would do coming into the auditing department with your staff?
One of the first things I would do is certainly understand as much as I possibly can about City of Lowell, the financials, the paperwork, the processes, the department, and the people. I think that's one of the more important things is understanding the people, because I'm going to have to work collaboratively across many different departments. As far as my staff goes, I'd certainly introduce myself, make myself visible, and try and do my best to get up to speed as I possibly can and demonstrate to them that I am equipped to do the job as city auditor.
Just a quick follow-up question. You're familiar with Plan E government?
Yes, I am.
Okay, do you know who, you're working for the council?
Yes.
Do you know the other folks that are working with the council? Do you know what department heads that would be?
I don't know. I've done
Okay.
a little bit of research through departments, but I know that obviously the auditor is unique and that'll have the dotted line, essentially, is how you'd look in a hierarchy.
Okay.
Because it needs its independence.
Okay, good. Thank you very much, Brian.
Thank
Appreciate
you,
it.
Counselor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council Leahy.
Thank you. Hi, Brian, thanks for coming in tonight.
Hi, thank you, Counselor.
So, as Council Leary said, most by the time we get to this point, a lot of the questions have been answered. So what brings you to Lowell? What excites you about applying for the position here in Lowell?
Well, I think it's a wonderful opportunity. It's certainly not if it was an easy position, it certainly would have been filled by now. I think there's a lot of challenges it brings. Again, as I spoke in my introduction, I think the city of Lowell offers a great deal. It's one of the largest cities in the state, and it offers some rare opportunity. Again, I think it's a beautiful place, and it offers a lot, and it has a, as far as the form of government and the size of it, it offers a heck of a lot in unique positions such as a city auditor, where you kind of get your hands in everything and you get a vast exposure of what's going on. I think that's intriguing, and I also think, as I said, it's a challenge. I believe I'm up to it.
Okay. And I guess generally it's a 3-year appointment. I don't believe there was a contract last time, so that you'd be comfortable working without a contract?
I would. I mean, I'd certainly understand the nature of it, and again, I'd certainly like to be kept abreast as to where I stand and how I do the work. But yes, I certainly understand that.
Okay. All right. You answered a lot of questions that I had, so thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you, Counselor.
Hi, good evening, Mr.
Thank you,
Perry.
Counselor. Before Counselor Elliott starts, we're going alphabetically, and so I'm next, I think, before you. And so I just have a few questions. As Counselor Leahy mentioned, many of the questions were answered, but where you work now, if you were to get this position, when would you be able to begin? How much notice would you need to give to the hospital?
As a professional courtesy, it'd have to be a couple of weeks, to be honest with you. I couldn't start immediately, but I'd say typically probably roughly 3 weeks, give or take some time, but right around there. A little more than 2, but certainly not more than 4, depending on, position timing, that sort of stuff.
Okay. Hey, how many beds are at Lawrence General, do you know?
189.
189 beds? Okay. And I think as it was mentioned, but just so that it's clear to you, you'd be, you have the day-to-day operation during the regular business hours at City Hall, and then an additional requirement is that you attend the meetings on Tuesday night, and those meetings can last up until 10 o'clock. But they don't necessarily last that long. Probably the average is more like 8 or 8:30, I guess. But that would be not an issue for you.
No, I understand that.
Okay. And then I think you mentioned if there were other meetings, if there were subcommittee meetings and so forth, you'd be able to attend those as well.
I understand the nature of the position, and
Okay.
I understand that there's certainly obligations. And again, it looks like there would be obligation for the retirement board. There's also a grant oversight committee, and I'm not sure, again, if there's any other obligations when those committees meet, or essentially how long they're set to run for. So I think some of them are, obviously the retirement board's an ongoing thing, but I wasn't sure about the extent of the vision of the grant oversight board.
Okay. And in your career, has there ever been a time when you've supervised a group of people in any capacity, even going way back? Or
I've trained new employees, I've mentored new employees. I haven't had a position where I've been in a supervisor position, though.
Okay. All right. And you understand it is a 3-year appointment, but I guess generally, assuming that you were doing a good job, that the 3 years would roll over to another 3 years.
That would be my expectation as well.
You could end up being here for a long time.
Which is what I'd hope for, yes.
Okay. Well, your predecessor was only here for a year, so I think that's what everybody here is hoping to, is that the next auditor stays for a good long time.
Yeah, no, that wouldn't be my intention to do that, no.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have. Counselor Elliott.
All set?
All set.
Thank you. So, Mr. Perry, thank you for your patience. I know you applied in November. We've certainly gone through a long and exhaustive process to get the right person here. And I mean, I personally think it's essential that this individual has a background in accounting. Interestingly enough, your bachelor's and master's in business administration. However, you did pass the CPA
Yes, I did.
exam. And what I think is equally, if not more important, is that you're a certified government accountant. So you went out to Amherst and you took the courses. It's over a number of, it's not a whole weekend now, it's staggered, right?
The test, you set them up again. You have, I guess, I didn't even take the courses. I did work on my own early in the morning and late at night to study. I did self-study program. I didn't go out to Amherst for any of the courses. I did it all on my own. The test, essentially, the clock starts for that 18 months.
Okay.
From the
You
date.
passed it.
I passed them all, yes, within a
Okay.
year.
So let me just ask, what, the differences between, government accounting and private accounting, if you will. What's the strength or weakness that you think you'd bring to either or? I presume you're using more financial accounting, cost accounting, maybe even operations management in your current position, and how would you see that transferring to this job?
We do a great deal of cost accounting. It's actually one of the initiatives that I've been a large part of at Lawrence General Hospital over the past couple of years, just to kind of get a greater understanding of the levers, essentially, of cost, of what we're doing per surgery, per case. The hospital's a nonprofit, so we also do a form of somewhere between the governmental accounting with the encumbrance system as well, compared to the private accounting. So that's
This is
also
primarily fund accounting.
Yes.
So, what experience do you feel you could bring from your prior job to fund accounting?
again, I'd certainly bring, and I don't have obviously have the government accounting experience side of it, but I've certainly learned and read enough about it from the exam preparation side of it. But I do have
But
an
I presume that
understanding
you
and
load the
appreciation
budget,
for it.
right?
I'm sorry?
Excuse me for interrupting you, but you load the budget at the hospital, right?
Yes.
And you check your expenses against your loaded budget to make sure
The
you're in
actual versus the
compliance.
budget every month, yes.
So one of the major responsibilities is to approve payment, record those payments, make sure they're not exceeding the budget.
Yes.
And what type of reports do you provide to senior managers at the hospital?
Well, one that I will do is on the capital budget side, is I will, again, document what we're budgeting for, the item, the department, who's requested it. We'll give it its own unique account number. And then I'll also document the requests that come in against that account number, when the request comes in, as well as what we've actually paid on the GL side, what our balance is there, and what the variance is between both the budget to the actual GL, as well as what we've had before requests come in. So I'll review that every 2 weeks and send that off to senior management. That's one of the key reports as far as that goes on the capital side. Again, on a daily side, I'll track all sorts of volume and productivity on a daily basis for day-to-date, month-to-date, week-to-date, and year-to-date, how we're doing in a variety of key performance indicators, and get that to senior management.
Reconciliation, we've had some challenges here. Cash reconciliation.
Yes.
Do you have anything in your background or prior experience of similar nature? How would you address it?
again, I think with the cash reconciliation, one of the big things is having all the information in front of you and ultimately going through the painful process of mapping exactly what was spent, was it spent on the right account, what the figures were, and is that matching what we're seeing in our statements? I know it's a painful process, but it's one of those things that has to be done right and done timely.
So lastly, challenges of this position that you're applying for. What would you foresee as one of those challenges?
I think getting acclimated to the position is certainly going to provide its own unique set of challenges. I've seen before in the past, I know that you guys have certainly been keenly aware of people understanding munis. That's a challenge that I've seen and heard of in other different cities or towns, that's caused problems where deliverables have failed to meet their deadlines. That's certainly one of the things I'm aware of, as well as also having staff that I work with, work for, and collaborate with, and I understand the challenges that will certainly come with that.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate your time. May I just ask one follow-up? Financial system, what type of financial accounting system do you use at the hospital?
The operating system, it's Paragon.
Paragon.
It's one of the only hospitals in New England that has it. I don't know why we don't have Meditech or one of those other ones that most of the other hospitals have, but we have it's a McKesson product. So McKesson's one of the brand names, and we
Okay.
kind of use relatively an obscure product for the area. So
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
thank you, Counselor.
Thank you, Council. Council Belanger?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Brian, good evening.
How you doing, Counselor?
You can be at ease. We're nearing the end here. Ninth and final. But my colleagues were very thorough in questioning, as you can see, I'm sure, so there's really not much left. So let's elaborate a little bit, Brian, on your municipal experience you do have in the town of Andover and the Board of Assessors. Why
Sorry,
don't you
North Andover.
elaborate the abatement process and whatnot? What were your responsibilities there?
Essentially, I will be the clerk, and the assessors will bring all of the data, all the research to us. So I will be responsible for reviewing and assessing. They might have comparable sales in the neighborhood, on the street, or what the other values of comparable like-kind property would be for that area. So one of the things it's essentially to my discretion of determining essentially what is a fair amount for personal property or for the real estate property. So I don't have a great deal, I have to be at an arm's length given the board position as opposed to the actual employees of it. So there's a limited amount of research I can do going in, but I have to obviously weigh all the data given to me, all the research done, and try and determine what's fair for the property.
Okay. All right. Now, at Lawrence General, I am impressed that you did have a rather large budget there. I was surprised to see it that much. So that's right up there. The city of Lowell is about $350 million. So you're not far.
Okay.
As far as numbers go. But, the position itself really is a little, might be a tad bit out of the scope, but I still think within your talent range at the same time. But how are you going to make this adjustment now? You're now managing personnel of a half a dozen people. You have a larger budget. You have unions, contracts to tend with, a new software you have to learn. I'm not saying you're not capable, but...
No, as far as I guess to try and go one at a time there, the software is, I understand that's a challenge, but I also do believe I'm more than well equipped to understand, again, the permissions, the data type roles, the document management side, and most importantly, and my favorite is obviously the report creation and generation, to get the data out of the system and get it into the hands, into an understandable format for the end users, the people reading it. So I think I'm well equipped to pick up the learning curve on the software side pretty quickly. As far as managing people goes, is again, one of the things that I want to reiterate is I want to treat people as the way I expect to be treated when I'm working for them. And I also expect that you manage expectations. You understand what you need to, from the bottom end of it, is if you understand what your job is, what your expectations are, and how it fits into the larger piece of the puzzle, you're more likely to succeed in that position. That's something I would reiterate and do my best to essentially provide to potential people I'm working with. And I'm sorry, there was another piece of that question too. The unions, yes, we do work with the nursing unions. Actually, that's one of the the biggest pieces we have in the overtime issue is something that's not unique to the city of Lowell, but it's also something seen in the nursing side in the hospital.
Okay, yeah, that's similar. That's good. That's good to hear.
Yes.
Okay, all right, Ryan, well, thank you for your time and your interest in the city of Lowell. I do appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. That concludes the interview portion. You're very welcome to make a closing statement if you want. You're not required to do that, but if you wanted to do that, you should do it right now.
Thank you. I don't really have a heck of a lot to add. In closing, I hope that I'm able to prove to you that I'm more than capable of picking up on the challenges. I understand a great deal of the dynamics the city of Lowell faces, as well as I have a broad and diverse background, which isn't typical of most accountants. So I think I'd actually be up to the challenge. And I want to thank you again for the time and taking the time to meet with me and hear from me. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take 3 minutes before we do the third one.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Lyon, we'll just take a minute or two for Council Samaras, I'm sure.
Okay, sure. Just let me get a little settled in here. It's, you know, looking out is a little bit overwhelming, you know. It's something I suppose I would get used to. Hopefully I would get used to.
you. Welcome, Mr. Lenahan. If you wanted to make an opening statement, you should do so now, and then the councilors will ask questions one at a time until all 9 have completed their questions.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, my name is John Linehan. Born and brought up in the city of Lowell. I currently live in Lowell right now on 33 Ionian Circle, over in what some people call God's country, as the rock says at the bottom of the hill. You know, I've been blessed to be in this city for just about all my life. Except for a period of time when, you know, I got divorced and, you know, things changed, and then back in and back to the city that I love. I currently sit on City of Lowell, the Board of Parks. I've been the chairman there for about 20 to 25 years, and it's been a job that I thoroughly love and enjoy. For the main reason, it's given me the ability to interact with all the constituents of the City of Lowell, all the different organizations that come in and request permits, and you get to see how everything works and what the people are looking for this city to do. So I thoroughly enjoy that. My professional career, as most people may know, my father was a lawyer and a CPA in the city. I have a brother, Jay, who's in the city. You know, the Linehan family is fairly well known, and sometimes that's a blessing and sometimes that's a curse. People have preconceived ideas of what the different things are, and I like to say that I bring myself to the table. You know, it's nice to have connections with other people because they open doors, but you still have to walk through those doors yourself. And then you still have to produce on the other end. So I became an accountant, certified public accountant, and worked in private practice with my dad for many years until he became sick and retired. Then I went on sole proprietor myself. In the years that I worked with my dad, we did audits. We actually audited the city of Lowell 2 or 3 times. We audited the town of Ayer a couple of times. So I have experience in what the auditing function is and what you're supposed to go through. And sometimes when you first look at those books and records, you go, wow, you know, it is quite a task. But during those periods of time, you get to work with the people, the department heads, and you become friendly with them and realize what their function was so I could do my function. You know, that everybody worked together to provide an audit for the city. I also moved on past that. Blue Book legislation, Yellow Book legislation, I should say, from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts changed the way small independent accounting groups can audit. There are now so many requirements that a small group would have to spend most of their time getting certified in Yellow Book, then they wouldn't be able to go out there and earn a living doing it. So the big companies do it, the smaller companies kind of get forced out. So we kind of moved away from that, do a lot of tax work, dealing with the Internal Revenue Service. And with that is giving me the idea of deadlines, laws, legislation, what has to be done, what timeframes have to be met, what you can do and what you can't do. So I've had great exposure with that, not only with the Internal Revenue Service, but the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. A lot of my clients are people that live in the city of Lowell. A lot of the businesses that we do are people that operate in the city of Lowell, and that's always been a great thing for me. You know, I raised 2 kids, and they went to school in Lowell. Like I said, until I got divorced and their mother took them away. But, you know, my son went to Lowell High for a period of time. He was able to play soccer in Lowell High School for a while, and he thoroughly enjoyed that. You know, and with that, I got to interact with other different parts of the community of Lowell. Yeah, let's see. You know, currently, I had worked, when my father passed away, I'd worked for my own for a little period of time. And then I saw things that needed to change in life. I kind of went and I moved to Chelmsford. I went to work for an accounting firm out there, Stafford and Gaudette, Brian Stafford. I think most people, you might know of him. Very good individual. I worked there for 3 years, had a very good time, but it was time for me to move back on. It was something to go back on my own. Everything, I left on good terms. We had great terms. It was a great 3 years of my life. So now I'm back as a sole practitioner. Excuse me, I'm a little bit nervous. Practitioner, and you know, we're doing that. You know, I've always wanted to do something for my city. You know, as I looked in the past, I might have applied for the treasurer's job. because I believed I wanted to be a person that only lived in the city but worked for the city. It's always been a goal of mine, and it still is, and hopefully that will happen, I enjoy working with the people of the city. I enjoy working with the councilors. You can know, as most of you know, you ran for public office, you get that feeling inside there's something that you want to do. I've always had that. I continue. That would be a dream of mine to be able to do that. To be able to practice my trade and do it in my own town as well. Let's see, I'm happily married right now. Got a wife, 2 dogs, and a batch of grandchildren that keep me busy. Life is good today. Life is good today. And I think I'll end on that right now, so. Please feel free to ask me any and every question you may like, okay?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Leonard. We'll start with Council Leary. Could you move the microphone a little closer, please?
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Hi, John. Good to meet you, and thank you for applying for this position. First question really is, why do you want to leave the private sector to come into the public sector and work as the City of Lowell's auditor?
I've always had a desire to work for the City of Lowell. It's always been a thing of mine. This sector has its own challenges, of which I would like to be able to deal with. Being on my own has pluses and minuses. But like I said, I've always had this love of working for government. I've always loved government. I've always loved my city. So to come work here would be something that I feel like I could accomplish, that I'd be able to give back what the city has given to me over the period of time.
Working in the private sector, what would you think would be the biggest challenges if you were to be hired for this position, moving into the public sector?
Anytime you change jobs, you're going to have challenges. One is understanding the landscape, understanding who the people are, understanding who the players are, understanding what rules you have to play by, deadlines, what reports to do when. And that's just a learning curve. I think no matter where you go, you're going to have that.
Okay.
I had that when I left my own private practice and went to work for the accounting firm in Chelmsford. They did things a little bit different. Wasn't any better, wasn't any worse, it was just different.
Okay. While working for other folks, if someone gave you criticism, how did you handle that, and what did you learn from it?
I've always valued criticism because I realize that I don't always have the answer. The one thing I've always liked, other people come out and pointing things out that I could do better. One of the things I likened it to was as a soccer referee, in which I did all over the state, and people said, you can't criticize your own referee friends. And I said, why not? We get better that way. And then we service the people of the game better. So when people give me criticism, at first sometimes I might, depending where it comes from, you go, oh. But then I honestly take a look at it because I want to get better. I know I don't always have the right answer. But hopefully I always have the ability to go look for the right answer. That's the most important thing to me.
Okay. Have you had any experience auditing or reviewing federal grants?
We've done some on a limited basis years ago. I've looked at some things that clients have had and brought in that I've reviewed and looked, but nothing in depth.
Okay. How about managing people? Have you ever managed people or hired people or gave a review to somebody?
We had a small office group after my father retired. There were a couple of people, an office girl, an office man, my sister being one of them, and trying to manage families never easy.
No. So managing folks, did you ever have to, when you did you had to have criticism or give a review to somebody, how did you provide that feedback?
Okay. One, I think people have to have reviews on set times and get to know what their expectations are, what my expectations for their job is, their performance. And then to be able to talk and meet with them during certain times and say, okay, you're having trouble, you're doing this, can I help you out? Mm-hmm. And then if you have to sit down and really have something, then at least you've gathered your facts and information so you can point to certain things and try to help the person. And if they're a good, productive worker and there's a couple of issues here and there, you try to clean up those things so you can all work better as a team.
Okay, good. Last question for you. In planning, as you're aware, you're one of 3 folks that report directly to the city council. And you're really the eyes and the ears of the council, and you're the auditor. How would you work in collaboration as well as overseeing the city manager function and the city clerk function?
Well, obviously, they're going to be integral parts, different sections of government. They all have to work together. Everybody has to know what's going on. I'm sure it'll have its trials and tribulations, like any time, any marriage does, or any group does. But I think it'd be great. I would hopefully that I could learn from them, and hopefully they could learn from me. If we all work together to try to make the product a little bit easier and a lot to understand, especially for the council. So you understand what's going on, and any requests that you have, we can answer them. I realize that I'm going to be working with them, not out on an island by myself.
Okay, good. John, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you, Council. Council Mercia.
Good evening, Mr. Linehan. Thank you for being here, taking the time. I know that you love this city, all that you do, the great work you do for the Board of Parks. I really appreciate that. Mr. Linehan, living in Lowell, have you ever tuned into a city council meeting?
Yes, I have. Many over the years.
You have. And in your capacity, in your private practice, you oversaw employees. Did you happen to do a payroll for them? Were you the person that did the payroll?
Prepare the payroll?
Prepare-
Yeah, a lot of it was on a payroll service. You would
you
check
had a
off the
service.
hours and let the service handle it.
So if you were the auditor and you had to do the payroll, do you think you could do that?
Oh, I believe so.
You believe so? Good.
Actually, I know so.
You know so, good. Because you would be responsible for approval, payment, and recording of all financial transactions. You realize that, right?
Yes.
And you realize, since you did see a city council meeting, that you would be sitting over there every Tuesday evening with this council, right?
Yes.
Yes, you would know
I have to
that,
change my date night with my wife. Tuesday would not be open anymore.
right?
No.
Would you still practice privately?
I still have a few clients that I'd have to phase out. There's some people that I've been doing income taxes for 30 years. They're not a client, they're more of a friend. You develop a
Right.
relationship with them.
Sure.
You know when they have children, you know when they go through bankruptcy, you know an awful lot about them.
But you wouldn't be opening up a practice on the side?
No,
Okay.
no, that would be downscaling that.
Right, I understand, good. Are you familiar with the Munis system?
Yes, I am.
Are you familiar with the Schedule A? I know it's very impressive here, all the things that you can do. It says petty cash. What about free cash? Are you familiar with free cash?
I haven't reviewed it in depth recently. I know there are requirements and qualifications that you have to go through.
Yeah, there's a
But
lot
it-
of requirements.
Yeah, it's just a matter of getting up to speed and learning what those things are. And like any new job, you have to learn what your new
Right.
requirements are.
And you would have people in the auditor's office that would probably be more familiar with it, and they would be helping you. You wouldn't have a problem with that either, right?
No, I would welcome that freely.
So you do have good communication skills?
I believe I have very good communication
Well,
skills.
how do you know that?
Over the years, I've been involved in various different groups, either religious groups or sporting groups, and somehow people always pick me to be the chairperson or the spokesperson. And it's not because I don't want the job, sometimes I think it may be, but usually because I conduct myself very well. I'm able to follow Robert's Rules of Orders. I'm able to keep things going and flowing in an orderly direction. And I've been lucky. I think God's been good to me in that respect.
In that same vein of respect, what is your greatest asset that you would bring here to City Hall in the auditor's position?
My greatest asset is a desire to make the city a little better. It's something I've always wanted to do. And just my whole being.
Well, balance in the books would be the best, so that's,
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that goes without saying. You have to have a balanced set of books. And
So
and
you would-
hopefully they would be done correctly and on time.
and you would have a good rapport with the treasurer's office and the, financial aspect of the city.
I mean, that's where the money comes in and where the money goes out in the billing. And you have to work closely with them.
Right, Right,
My
thank you.
part is no good if their part is no good.
That's right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Leahy.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Linehan, for coming in. So what attracted you to the position here in Lowell? I know that you said that you would like to work for the city, but what's attractive to you about this?
I'm an auditor by trade. It's in my blood. It's something I've done all my life. You know, the tax field is just an extension of the auditing. When I originally started working for my dad, that's all I did was audit day in, day out. We did, like I said, we did municipalities, we did banks, we did big companies. It's something that I'm good at. You know, I can do it. I can look at a set of numbers and realize they're supposed to balance and just be able to, this belongs here and that belongs there. And it's just an innate ability that I have, and I enjoy it. I mean, most people hate numbers. To me, I enjoy it.
Good. All right, and you realize that we oversee the manager's office and the clerk and then auditor's office, so you'd be working for all 9 of us. And then you would have probably about 5 people maybe you would oversee in the office?
Yeah.
Okay. And,
Keeping the 9 if you're happy may be, you know, difficult at times, but I'll do my best.
okay, all right. And so currently are you in practice by yourself?
Yes, I am right now.
Okay. And the other question was to follow up. You're familiar with the schedules, Schedule A and the free cash and all that, so.
Yes, I've had exposure to them in the past. I haven't worked on them recently because there's been a need to, but it's something I could come up to speed with fairly quickly, I believe.
Okay. And the Munis system, that's something that you could bring yourself up to speed on?
Yes. I mean, it's a dual entry system of books, and, you know, you have to balance. I mean,
Yeah.
I learned that very early on in accounting, you know, debit and credit, and they have to balance, and if
Sure.
they don't, you're in trouble.
Yeah, okay. All right, well, I appreciate you coming in, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Milonazo.
Thank you, Mayor Kennedy. Good evening, John. Thank you for being here. Let me just open by saying that I guess I've been one of those that have been around for a long time, and I knew your dad very well and had a great deal of respect for your dad. In fact, he actually signed my diploma.
Oh, wow.
So I get to, see Dad on a regular basis. He was quite a gentleman, quite a
Thank you
professional.
very much, Counselor.
Again, thank you for your interest in this position. As you know, it's been vacant for some time. What would you do to go in and, again, auditor's office, they do the checks and balances, making sure things are in line. What would you do your first, say, couple of weeks on the job to make sure that things reconcile correctly and whatever you need to do relative to talking to department heads and looking at whatever books may have closed the previous month, just to make sure that everything's reconciled back to the appropriate, say, GL? What
Well,
would be your
the first
first
thing
step?
I would talk with the present auditor, the current interim auditor, and get some advice and direction from Mr. Healy and what important things he believes I should pay attention to first off the bat.
Okay,
I would do that, and then I would also go around and meet the different people that worked in the office, let them know who I am, let them know what, I expect and what they expect out of me, and try to say that we're a team, and we're going to work together. And I'm going to rely on them to help. We're all going to do this together.
right.
Because I know they could make it easy for me, or they could bury me in a heartbeat.
Right. Right. Being from Lowell and watching the council meetings and probably looking at the strides that the Murphy administration has made over the past few years, you know that they've got, in my opinion, a very good financial team in place. How do you see yourself, reporting to the council, but fitting into that team?
I see myself strengthening that group by
Okay.
adding to it.
Okay.
By able to share my knowledge and experience and helping each other out.
Okay.
A lot of those things you don't know until you're actually in place.
Right.
That you can help each other with
Okay.
things.
And as you know, the city gets an awful lot of federal and state assistance, and especially on the federal side, be it the Department of Housing and Urban Development or Department of Transportation, Department of Labor, working with the Career Center and so forth. Have you ever been involved in looking at federal grant agreements and how, again, going back after the fact, that the money was spent correctly and the...
Yes, actually, we did audit that in the past. Used to be things, and I've also been asked to look at various grants that CTI had.
Okay.
Perhaps that was in the city, to look at those grants to make sure that the money was spent correctly.
Okay.
And a lot of times there were gray areas, and you had to do some research, and, you know.
Does the $350 million budget give you any concern? I mean, that's the budget with, with the school department and the municipal side. That's a big number, in my opinion.
It's a big number. It's just an extra digit on the
Okay,
calculator, though.
okay. Did you have an opportunity, my last question, did you have an opportunity to look at the management review letter that Powers and Sullivan just issued for the city?
No, I haven't. No, I haven't.
Okay,
So,
great,
I
thank
mean,
you.
that is something that I would do. I'd look
Right.
at all that.
Right, okay,
So.
thank you. I'm all set, Mayor, thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you.
Counselor Elliott.
Thank you, and good evening, Mr. Lenihan. So, can you tell me, you're a certified public accountant, but would you be adverse? I think one of the standing certifications respected in the field, a municipal field, is certified government accountant, and it does take a little bit of time. Would that be something that you think would be of importance and interest to get that certification in this job?
You know, that is something that I looked into, and the strange thing about that degree, you can't go and sit for it and learn for it unless you're presently working in city government.
Right.
So, to apply for it, I mean, I've done the work before and looked in it, and I've always wanted to do it in the past to get something that would, help my knowledge. But they said, unless you have a job, we're not gonna let you take it.
Okay, so you've answered my question. You have to be a member of the association,
Correct,
but
yeah.
I do think it's important. I mean, you do have a background in accounting, but it does teach, require and teach the principles of fund accounting, which is somewhat separate from some of the accounting that you did. But your experience with municipal audits in the past, Ayer and the city, can you sort of just cite your experience in the process that you went through as a private firm in evaluating books, the city's books, field audits, et cetera?
I mean, actually, the numbers are the easy part, is to look and see that the council votes, what they voted for, what they voted on, what the restrictions were, was it spent correctly? Payroll, it's easy to check payroll, the number, but was it put in the correct columns? And there you'd have to do a little bit of research into what the law said. One of the other things that sometimes gets slipped to the side is all the benefits that come along with it. The payroll portion is one number, but the benefits, as most of you know, is something that's going to burden you for years to come. You want to make sure that that's correct in the right slot. Becoming part of that organization, there would be invaluable in that you would be able to interwork with other people that are doing the exact same thing.
So what would be some red flags that you would find, or some findings in some of the reports that
I mean,
you'd
the first one you
may be
look
able
at.
to try to work on here? Because we did get our management letter, and you haven't had an opportunity to see it, but as you might learn or might be aware, cash reconciliation has been a long-standing problem.
Yes.
What are some, in some of the audits that you've done throughout the years, what are some of the findings you?
I mean, that was one, when we audited the city, that was one job that I had, was balancing the cash. And I know you had, going into that safe, and there were cash deposits there that had been sitting there for not only weeks, but months, and they were accounted for in somebody's slip sheet, but they shouldn't have been there. They should have been deposited. And I think you've got to get a process in place, and that everybody knows it, and everybody's responsible, and you have a dual system of recording the cash, a dual system of depositing it. So not only one person, is that there are two people responsible that have to check each other. I don't know if there was any cash theft, and that's a very little thing, but just getting it in and applying it to the right account.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's not the actual cash. It's just the identifying and ensuring that entries are being made on both sides.
Right.
So,
What's the balance?
But it's something that we need to address. So your list of accomplishments or areas of X that you have focused on, trial balance. Can you go through? Clearly, trial balance is important in any
Trial
financial
balance is a
accounting
smaller
system.
version of your munis system.
Right.
Everything has to balance.
So in the private sector, can you just sort of draw an analogy?
It's simple. Your debit cash, credit revenue. Okay? your credit cash, debit payroll expense. So things, you've got an offsetting balance, so then they should balance. You
Financial.
do that in receivables. One of the problems that the city has always had is a lot of these excise taxes, the deferred ones that are sitting still out there. You know, are they encumbered, are they not encumbered? They're still sitting on the books. Are they collectible, are they not collectible? I mean, those things, the dollar volume is large.
And, well, you're right, and we're working on that, but personal property, we have sort of undertaken trying to close out and reconcile that after 6 years. How would you go about sort of managing or handling that particular area as well? It's a finding that came up in our management letter.
I think you have to find a good starting point to start with. And you might balance things this month, next month, and the third month. If the variance is the same, then you know you've at least got a good balance to go forward. You look at that variance and say, what do we do with it? Are we ever going to collect it? If we're not, you have to write it off. Then you're going to go through the laws and regulations, how we write it off, da-da-da-da-da-da.
Exactly.
But you got to establish a starting point.
Okay.
You know, you can't manage what you can't measure.
I know time is moving on, and there's a lot of other members that have questions, but just on, just one question. Reports, I think, one way to ensure transparency and for this branch of government to keep this body abreast is sort of, regular reports or, reports. I do see some consolidated statements. You've had some experience in that in the private sector. How would those two interface, your experience there, and what type of reports do you think you would provide to the council?
Well, financial statements are always an integral part of a company's ability to present their position to the bank, and usually to borrow money. In the city's case, it might be to get a bond rating. You have to, and one thing you look at, what's your cash value, what's your equipment value? How did you ascertain those? What type of steps did you take to measure those? What type of reliability can the person reviewing those statements have when they look at it? And for financial statements, there are various levels of financial statements. There's just a review, there's a certified audit, there's a qualified audit, and all those mean something different to the banker on the other end, or to the investor, depending that wants to buy the country.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. It was very informative.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you, Council Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Linehan, for applying for the position. I'm looking at your resume. A couple of things stick out. Can you give me an example of your municipal accounting experience?
My municipal accounting
Yes,
experience?
sir.
Yeah, a lot of it had to do early on when I worked with my dad, when we audited the city of Lowell. Actually did the audit here for, I think, 4 or 5 years. I think James Kennedy, I believe, might have been the treasurer at that time, Jimmy. So I don't know how many years that backs up. Councilor Lanazzo may know that answer. We did that. We also did the town of Ayer. We also did CTI grants quite a few years in a row. And those all met the municipal type of accounting where the system of bookkeeping is a little bit different. You just have to understand where everything goes, that's all.
Okay. And that same example, would that fall under the public accounting example you used on your resume as well?
Yes.
Okay. And then I know you work for private companies now. Do you generate expense versus revenue reports for private companies at this time?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. And I know it's
An income statement, what we would call it. It's a balance sheet would be what your assets and your liabilities are. An income and expense thing would be your revenues and your expenses.
And as part of your business, if you do see something that's out of whack, out of a particular budget or revenue versus expense, do you help out with ways to fix a problem within a company?
Yeah, hopefully you're monitoring something, depending on what type of the company it is. If you're monitoring, if you're getting monthly statements or quarterly statements, you can see the shift as it comes. And why is there a shift? And sometimes it's an easy rationale, what happened. Other times, somebody's just, instead of hitting number 2106, they're hitting 2109, and it's going to that account. It said it's a simple little mistake. You just go and check those.
Okay. Great, and thank you very much for applying. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you, Council Belanger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. John, good evening. How are you?
Very well, Councilor.
Well, we
Yourself.
thank you for your interest, but you're no stranger to applying to the city of Lowell. So did you not apply for, was it treasurer or auditor years ago, John?
I believe I did.
Pardon me?
I believe I did, yes, sir.
Okay, what position was it, may I ask? Was it the treasurer?
It was the treasurer's
Oh, it was the
position.
treasurer's office?
Right.
Okay, all right. And you've been on the Board of Parks for 10 years?
No, 20 to 25, I don't know. It's a
Excuse
long-
me.
Long
All right.
time, yeah.
Okay, sorry. Sorry about that. And you've been a lifelong resident of the city, so,
Pretty much, pretty much. I mean, in and out a couple of times
Yep.
for various reasons, but
Sure.
I live in
Okay.
Lowell now.
well, I think you're committed to the city, Lowell, and that's unquestionable, and I think it's great. But as to your resume, it's very impressive, John. I think you're a well-rounded candidate. You have experience in almost all aspects of the position. But nonetheless, it would be a whole different world for you. But what do you see as your biggest challenge now? Is, again, you got, a software program, Munis, you got union negotiations, you got a personnel of a half a dozen or so, and you're going to answer to the council, as you know. So what do you foresee as your biggest challenge here, making this adjustment, if you were to be selected?
I think my biggest challenge is to getting to people to know me and to know what I am, what my work ethic is like, what product I put out, and they can rely on it. The numbers are going to fix themselves. The numbers don't lie. The departments, working with them by treating them with respect, and hopefully I get respect back as well. I don't need everybody to like me. They may not. As long as they respect me, that's all I'm going to ask for. And I would respect them as well.
Okay, very good. I think I had a few questions, but they were asked for my colleagues, as they've been, again, very thorough tonight. So, John, thank you again for this evening, and you did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you, Counselor. And Counselor Samaras?
Thank you, Mayor Kennedy. John, thank you for applying for this position. People ask different questions. Some of them, sometimes I may be repetitive in some areas, but can you describe your management style? The thing is, you don't necessarily had to have a lot of people working for you, but how would you describe your management style or your ability to deal with people, leadership?
I believe I'm very easy to deal with people. I believe they get to know me, who I am. I'm very laid back, the setting expectations, and then working with people and always staying up on what situation, what's going on. Are they having problems? I wouldn't demand anything of anybody that I wouldn't do of myself. And a lot of times I'll lead by example. We need to get a job done. If the job's from 9 to 5, you're in here at 8, may not leave till 6. I'm not going to, people aren't going to get run over at 5 o'clock when I'm out the door. I've never, I've never looked at a clock.
Okay.
I
Can
try
you-
to lead by example, Counselor.
Can you tell me about a time that you had to give feedback to someone that you supervised, or someone you had to deal with in a situation where the information you would provide would be very important?
Yeah, never an easy situation. Dealing with other people. To me, the biggest thing is to have ongoing talks with people, reviews, so they know if there are problems in their work. So if it comes to sit down and have a major issue, that's no surprise to either one of us. And by preventing that, I think you can keep the wheel moving very smoothly. Because nobody likes to have those confrontations. It's not fun for anybody, but sometimes they're necessary.
Because the candidates tonight have not really had municipal experience, a lot of it, but you actually have had quite a bit by being an auditor, or having audited the city of Lowell, so that gives you basically a complete picture of our accounting system. But you're going to supervise a small group of people that have present knowledge, okay? And you're going to be coming into a situation where you're going to be learning at this point. Do you find that difficult to walk into, or how do you feel you'll be able to work with that type of staff that at present, we'll say, has more practical knowledge, although you're professional with a CPA background?
I've realized over the years I can learn a lot more from interacting with people than I can by reading a book. Although the book may show me how to go from 1 and 2 is 3, the people will show me why it may not be, or how to get there in a better route. And working with the people, that's what I like. The small group, we're going to work as a team. We can't get it done otherwise. I can't expect to do everything, and I don't expect them to do everything.
Okay.
We can do what I can't.
Okay. As I've said to some others, you're actually the eyes and ears, of the city council, and you'll be working with the various department heads also. and your responsibility is to audit each one of those departments. But at the same time, I personally see your position as also showing some leadership if they're not, we'll say, if they don't have the finances set up the way you think it should be in those departments. How are you going to handle that if a supervisor of a particular department says, you know what, I understand what you're saying, but I like the system, I've been using it for 25 years or whatever, and I don't want to change. And you see it as important to do that, to also give us the type of information that we need present day. So basically, how do you see yourself, dealing with some people who might be reluctant to change?
Again, the communication is very important to me. I have to be able to talk to this person, find out why they believe this system is better. Sometimes it's just fear on their end. They don't want to try something new. Fear will stop all of us in our tracks,
That's
I
that's
learned
basic. A
I
lot of
learned
people
that
don't
as I get
understand
older,
that.
yeah. And, try to help people overcome any objection that they have or any obstacle. And a lot of times we don't know what we don't know. And it might be something, maybe I'm looking at it, maybe their way works better. I have to have an open mind, David. They've been here working the numbers. They know what works. I might say this system works great. They use it all other parts of the country. But if it takes us 3 months to get it done and they can do the same thing in 2 weeks, guess what? We're using their system.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor.
I'm the last one, Mr. Leonard, and I just have a few questions, one of which is, you mentioned that there were several times when you and your father did the audit for the city.
Mm-hmm.
Do you recall what years those were, or at least, can you ballpark when that was?
Probably 20 plus years ago, Counselor.
Okay, so what would that be, in the 1990s?
Maybe, I'm just trying to remember. Time sometimes eludes me. I know I can find out for you, though.
Do you remember who the city
That's one thing I'm
manager
good
was?
at. I'm not going to make up an answer. If I don't know it, I'm going to research it and get
Right.
it back.
Do you recall who was the city manager at the time?
Jimmy Kennedy was the treasurer, and I think it was after Mr. Campbell might have been the city manager.
Okay. Okay, and if you were to get the position, when would you be able to start?
I will start tomorrow if you want me to.
Okay, but you have a practice now. right?
That's
You have an
correct.
office that's open
Yes,
now.
yes.
So, you'd have to, you gotta wind that down.
I'd have to wind that down. The one thing that I have, through April 15th is the filing deadline. I owe it to my clients to at least get them through that date. I couldn't see doing anything short of that. I've got a week's vacation planned, and as soon as I get back from vacation, that Sunday, I'm yours.
Okay.
So, I don't know what your time frame is, and I'll work within that. I don't mind working. I enjoy it.
Well, we're getting heavy-duty pressure from Mr. Healy.
Okay. No, I can feel that coming this way, yeah.
No, we aren't really, but so are you saying that you wouldn't be able to start really until the 15th? Would it take, the 15th is when that's how long it would take you to close out your office, or is it?
Income tax filing date runs through, this year, it's April 18th.
Yes.
For various reasons. Okay. I have commitments to clients to get their stuff done through that date.
Okay.
After that, I would put extensions in. If you needed me to start earlier, I'd have to make adjustments to do things to get them done earlier.
Okay. Do you do that all by yourself at this point?
Right now I am. When I was working in Chelmsford, there was a staff. Right now, I'm back on myself. I do have a couple of people that assist me from time to time.
Okay. And was there a time in your career, has there been a time when you have supervised a group of people? Or have you not had the opportunity?
In the workforce, no. I've been a supervisor in a lot of various organized charities that I've been on the board of. And I've always found those to be more troublesome than the people that actually you pay to do. Volunteers are tough to motivate sometimes.
Okay. And I think it's already been asked about whether or not you would be able to, in addition to the regular office hours, you'd be able to attend the other
That's no
The city
issue.
council meetings on Tuesday night, and then the other meetings that you would be expected to.
I expect that to come with the counselor.
Okay.
That's no problem.
And so, after April 15th, and after the office your office was closed out, or whatever you would do, you mentioned that you had several friends that you did their tax returns, and you've done those for 30 years or
Yeah,
so.
they're clients. They become friends over time, counselor.
Okay. And so would you expect to continue to service those people in terms of their tax returns going forward
No,
while you were?
hopefully what I'd be able to do, if they'd be willing, is to pass them off to someone that I trust. You know, we may be going back to the previous company that I just left.
Okay.
I realize to try to put in that many hours, you serve many masters, you don't help any of them.
Okay. Okay, I don't really have anything else. So that concludes the interview process. You would have an opportunity if you wished to make a closing statement, or you're not obliged to do that, but
Okay.
if you wanted to do that, this would be the time to do it.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank everybody for the opportunity. You know, it's a great opportunity I see for myself for working for the city, something I've always wanted to do. As the paper had listed me down on one thing, I'm undaunted. You know, if I believe in something, you know, I continue to fight for it, and working for the city government is something that I always found valuable to myself, and part of my work ethic and part of what I enjoy doing. You know, so I believe I offer a multitude of skills for this job. I believe that I can do it well, and I believe that everyone will be very happy with what I do. We may have a difference of opinions upon times. You know, that's to be expected. You know, we can disrespect, not be disrespectful. I forget how that's long, because I got it wrong, but, you know. But I think this would be a great opportunity for the city to have someone that loves the city the way I do, to be able to sit there and work for it. It wouldn't be work for me, you know. And it's something I've always wanted to do, and if you look back when I've applied for a couple of applications, and when I work for the city of Lowell and the Board of Parks, it's something that I thoroughly enjoy, so, you know. If you can find it in your hearts and, you know, to give me a shot, I think you'll be well rewarded. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you.
I guess the question is, how do you want to proceed? Do you want to take a vote next Tuesday? We don't have anything on the agenda for tomorrow evening. We've got these three candidates. We've got the three that we interviewed previously. Is there anybody that's interested in doing additional interviews?
Mayor?
Yes.
Yes, that was my next question. So we could not vote on any chance tomorrow night? It's not advertised properly? Is that the issue, Mr. Mayor?
Well, it is, it's not on the agenda. Plus, you know, maybe some of the members of the council want a little time to call references, or just to sort of, I mean, we just did 3 interviews, so it's, you may want a little time.
That was
to
just a
sort of-
point, yeah. I just wanted to get that out there. Okay. I'd like to see one of my other colleagues, if they need more time, or whatever the issue may be. Thank you.
Maybe Council Leahy.
Sure, I think vote the next meeting that we can.
A week from Tuesday?
Yeah, a week from Tuesday, give us enough time to gather our thoughts. I thought tonight's interviews were good. I was impressed with all 3 of them. They were all very well prepared. I thought it was a big difference from the last interview, so it was encouraging.
Okay, so is that a motion to vote on it?
Sure, motion to vote next
Vote
Tuesday.
next Tuesday?
Second.
Seconded by Council Mercy. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
All opposed? So voted. Motion to adjourn. All in favor, all opposed? Adjourn.
We're good.
Yeah, see you tomorrow.